You're all welcome to today's deep news analysis. This one is heavy. This one is serious. If you care about justice in Nigeria, stay with me till the end. Please, before we start, subscribe to this channel. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss important updates like this. This channel is for Nigerians who want truth, not noise. Now listen carefully. A very powerful human rights group in Africa has spoken. And what they said has changed the whole conversation around Nnamdi Kanu. Let's get into it. On the 20th of November, Nnamdi Kanu was sentenced to life imprisonment. After that judgment, he was moved to Sokoto prison. Many Nigerians were shocked. Many were angry. Many were confused. But now, something bigger has entered the picture. The Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa, known as Ihrda, has stepped in. This is not a random group. This is not social media talk. Ihrda is based in Banjul, the Gambia. They work across Africa. They fight human rights cases at the highest African level. They handle serious cases. And many times, they win. Now hear this clearly. After looking into Nnamdi Kanu's case, Ihrda is asking for his immediate release. Immediate. Not review. Not delay. Release. That alone should make every Nigerian pause. This development is important because it did not come from inside Nigeria. It did not come from politicians. It did not come from activists on social media. It came from a respected African legal institution that understands how regional law works. Ihrda has a long history of taking cases to African human rights bodies. They represent victims without asking for money. They focus on justice, procedure, and lawful conduct by states. When they speak, courts listen. When they act, governments pay attention. Their interest in this case signals that something is wrong at a deeper level. This is not about emotions. This is not about loyalty. This is about whether African laws were followed or ignored. Nnamdi Kanu's sentencing to life imprisonment immediately raised serious questions. Legal experts began to ask how the process was handled. Observers questioned how evidence was treated. Others focused on the speed and direction of the judgment. Then came the transfer to Sokoto prison. That move alone sparked concern among many Nigerians. It created fear. It created uncertainty. It created more tension around an already sensitive matter. In Nigeria, prison transfers are not taken lightly. They often send strong signals. They can calm situations or make them worse. In this case, it added more weight to public concern. What makes this moment different is the timing of Ihrda's statement. They did not rush. They did not react in anger. They investigated. They reviewed documents. They studied the legal path of the case. Their conclusion is clear and firm. They believe the case should not have reached this outcome. They believe standards were not respected. They believe African human rights principles were pushed aside. This is where the news becomes serious. When a regional body raises red flags, it goes beyond national debate. It becomes an African issue. It becomes a record issue. It becomes a precedent issue. Nigeria is a signatory to African human rights treaties. Nigeria has obligations under those treaties. Nigeria is expected to act within those rules, even in difficult cases. Ihrda's involvement suggests those obligations may have been breached. That is not a small claim. That is not an easy claim. That is a heavy legal position. This also means that the case is now under wider observation. Legal institutions across Africa will follow it. Human rights bodies will track it. International partners will take note. For Nigerians, this moment matters. It matters for trust in the justice system. It matters for how laws are applied. It matters for how power is exercised. This is not about supporting or opposing one man. It is about the system itself. It is about whether due process still holds value. It is about whether legal limits still exist. That is why this news cannot be ignored. It cannot be brushed aside. It cannot be reduced to noise. A powerful African human rights organization has spoken. They have taken a position. They have asked for immediate action. And once such a call is made, silence becomes loud. This stage of the matter sets the tone for everything that follows. It frames the discussion. It defines the pressure. It shapes the response that will come from authorities. For the public, it signals that this case has moved into a new phase. A phase where legal accountability takes center stage. A phase where regional law meets national decision-making. Nothing said so far can be treated as casual opinion. Every word carries weight. Every position has consequences. That is why Nigerians must understand the gravity of this moment. This is not routine news. This is not ordinary commentary. This is a defining point that will influence what happens next. The implications are serious, lasting, and impossible to dismiss. This is the foundation on which the rest of this issue now stands, firmly and publicly. Every decision made from this point forward will be measured carefully by history. Ihrda has made it clear that their position is based on law, not sentiment. Their statement reflects a careful review of how Nnamdi Kanu's case was handled from start to finish. According to their findings, the process that led to the life sentence raised serious legal concerns. They pointed to the manner of arrest, the conditions surrounding his return to Nigeria, and the structure of the trial itself. In their view, these elements did not align with established African human rights standards. One of the major issues highlighted is due process. African human rights law places strong emphasis on fair trial rights. This includes lawful arrest, proper jurisdiction, access to legal representation, and an independent court process. Ihrda believes these principles were not fully respected in this case. Their concern is not isolated. Across Africa, regional legal bodies have repeatedly ruled that trials must follow strict procedures, even in sensitive or security-related cases. No matter the charge, the process must remain lawful. Once procedure is compromised, the outcome becomes questionable. Ihrda also focused on the question of jurisdiction. They raised concerns about whether the court handling the case had proper legal footing, given the surrounding circumstances. Jurisdiction is not a minor detail. It is the foundation of any valid judgment. Another point raised involves the handling of evidence. Human rights law requires that evidence be obtained and presented in a lawful manner. Any breach in that process weakens the integrity of the trial. Ihrda indicated that there were gaps and inconsistencies that should have been addressed. The organization also referenced previous African human rights decisions that emphasize state responsibility. Governments are expected to respect legal limits, even when dealing with individuals accused of serious offenses. Failure to do so often leads to regional intervention. This is where the matter moves beyond Nigeria's internal legal system. African human rights mechanisms exist to correct such situations. They act when national processes fall short of agreed standards. Ihrda's assessment suggests that the errors in this case are not technical or minor. They view them as fundamental. Errors that strike at the core of fairness and legality. Because of this, they argue that the life sentence cannot stand as it is. In their legal opinion, the process that produced it is flawed. And a flawed process cannot produce a just outcome. Their call for immediate release is tied directly to this reasoning. They are not asking for a retrial under the same conditions. They are not asking for delay or review. They are stating that the continued detention itself is a violation. This position carries weight because of Ihrda's role in African legal practice. They have represented cases before the African Commission and the African Court. Their arguments are built on precedent, not speculation. When such an organization issues a statement like this, it signals that the case may already meet the threshold for regional legal action. That is a serious development. It also places pressure on Nigeria's compliance record. Nigeria has historically engaged with African human rights institutions. Ignoring such a call could raise questions about commitment to those obligations. The issue of Sokoto prison was also indirectly noted in the broader context of detention conditions. African human rights law does not only look at conviction. It also examines treatment after sentencing. Transfer decisions, detention conditions, and access to legal counsel remain under scrutiny. All these factors contribute to the overall assessment of rights compliance. What IHRDA has done is frame the case within a legal lens that cannot be dismissed easily. They have moved the conversation away from emotion and politics. They have placed it squarely in the area of law and responsibility. This means responses will now be measured against legal standards, not public opinion. Statements will be analyzed. Actions will be compared with treaty obligations. For Nigerian authorities, this creates a narrow path. Any step taken must align with African human rights commitments. Anything less invites further scrutiny. For observers, it confirms that the case has crossed into a regional legal space. Once that happens, outcomes are no longer controlled by domestic processes alone. IHRDA's findings also set a reference point for future cases. How Nigeria responds will influence how similar cases are viewed going forward. This is why the organization emphasized that the errors identified are not acceptable under African law. They are not issues that can be corrected quietly. They require clear and decisive action. The message is direct. A case handled in violation of human rights standards cannot be allowed to continue unchecked. Silence or delay only deepens the problem. As it stands, IHRDA's position represents a formal challenge to the legality of the proceedings. It raises questions that demand answers, and those answers must come through lawful and transparent means. This development has now shifted the focus from what was decided to how it was decided. That shift is critical, because in law, process is everything. Once the process fails, legitimacy fails with it. The focus has now shifted to the highest level of political responsibility. With IHRDA's position on record, attention naturally turns to the role of the federal government and the authority of the president. IHRDA has stated that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should facilitate Nnamdi Kanu's release. This statement is not framed as an appeal for mercy. It is framed as a call for lawful intervention. In systems that operate under constitutional order, the executive arm has defined powers. Those powers exist to correct situations where legal processes conflict with broader obligations. IHRDA's view is that this is one of such situations. The organization's reasoning is based on Nigeria's commitments under African human rights instruments. These commitments are not symbolic. They are binding. They require action when violations are identified. By naming the president directly, IHRDA has placed responsibility where executive authority exists. They are signaling that the issue has reached a point where political leadership must engage with legal reality. This does not mean interference with the judiciary. It means acting within constitutional limits to uphold international obligations. African human rights law recognizes this balance. At this stage, the case carries reputational consequences. Nigeria's standing within African legal systems matters. Compliance strengthens credibility. Non-compliance weakens it. Other African states are watching how Nigeria responds. Human rights bodies are observing. Legal scholars are taking note. A refusal to act may lead to escalation at the regional level. Cases can be filed. Rulings can be issued. And such outcomes often come with directives that are difficult to reverse. IHRDA's statement appears designed to prevent that path. Early action can limit damage. Delayed response increases pressure. This moment also tests leadership judgment. Sensitive cases require careful handling. The decision made here will define the tone for future human rights engagements. Within Nigeria, public confidence in institutions is at stake. How this issue is resolved will send a message about the value placed on due process. It will show whether legal errors are acknowledged or ignored. The President's role, as framed by IHRDA, is not to debate guilt or innocence. It is to ensure that legal standards are respected. That distinction is critical. Executive facilitation can take different lawful forms. What matters is alignment with rights obligations. What matters is preventing continued violation. As the case develops, silence will be interpreted. Action will be assessed. Every response will carry meaning. International partners often evaluate countries based on how they handle difficult cases. This is one of those cases. The outcome will be studied. For now, the facts are clear. A leading African human rights organization has concluded that the process was flawed. They have requested immediate release. They have pointed to executive responsibility. This creates a defining moment, not just for the individuals involved, but for Nigeria's legal and political institutions. How this moment is handled will shape future interactions with regional bodies. It will influence how seriously Nigeria's commitments are taken. There is also a broader implication. Human rights enforcement relies on state cooperation. When states respond constructively, systems work. When they resist, tensions grow. The coming period will reveal the direction chosen. Engagement or resistance. Correction or escalation. Ihrda's intervention has already changed the landscape. The case is no longer isolated. It is now part of a wider legal conversation. That shift cannot be undone, only managed. The responsibility now lies with those in authority to decide how history will record this moment. Whether it will be seen as a point of correction or a point of conflict. What happens next will define the legacy of this decision path. The implications will extend beyond the present, and the outcome will remain a reference point for years to come.